Olá, pessoal. Hello. How are you all doing? Good to see so many of you already. I will just check that I get a thumbs up from my team that this is all streaming correctly because we know what lives are like. Yes, okay, we're all good to go. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining me for another student interview. This one is particularly fun because I actually had the pleasure of meeting these students in person this weekend. Getting to know them a bit better, preparing for the interview, we realized we're currently only 5 minutes apart. So I actually bumped into their language learning partner and was like, hey, this is really funny. So Portugal can be a very small world, but I can't wait to share their story today because they have made such amazing progress with their Portuguese conversation skills and are having such a great time here, making friends, doing all sorts of activities, getting to know people, living the dream. So I can't wait for you to hear the story from themselves, Kris and Lowell, today. So we'll be talking about where they started, where they're at now, but most importantly, how they got there. Because the point of these interviews is to encourage as many of you guys as possible to either start that learning that you said you were going to be doing for Portuguese or to keep going, because it really is possible for you to get to where you want to go, regardless of your age, regardless of how many times you might have tried and failed. I want you to know that it's going to make a huge difference to your relationships and to your life here in Portugal, as Kris and Lowell are going to be showing us. So if you are tuning in, you probably do already know who I am. My name's Liz, and I host a YouTube channel called Talk the Streets, and I teach practical Portuguese in plain English, but I'm also the creator of the Portuguese Pro program, which is an online course and community that takes you from saying your very first words up to having your first conversations with native speakers. And that is how I met this lovely couple, Kris and Lowell. So I'm going to add them to the stream so we can hear their story and get started. Hi guys, great to see you.
Hola.
Hola, Liz.
Hola. So we have to start at the beginning. I've had the pleasure of hearing your story, but for everybody who's watching at home, tell us a little bit about who you are and why you decided to learn Portuguese.
Sure, yeah. I'm Kris. This is my spouse, Lowell, and we decided to move from Seattle, Washington to Portugal. We made the decision last summer, and we felt like it was really important for us and would be a pleasure to learn Portuguese for our new adventure. We're on D8 digital nomad visas, and we've been here 46 days.
Amazing. So not long at all in country itself, but as I say, huge strides in your Portuguese. So it's a common story. Portugal just captures people's hearts. They can imagine themselves living there, but learning the language is such an important step. So tell me a little bit about why you decided that it was important to learn the local language, and when you first got started, what were some of the hurdles and difficulties you were coming up against? Because I think your first attempt with a tutor was not as successful as you'd hoped. Tell us a bit about that so that the audience can relate.
Yeah, so once we decided that we wanted to move to Portugal, it was incredibly clear to us that we wanted to not just be conversational, but eventually be fluent here. We just felt like that was the most respectful thing to do. It was the thing that was going to help us feel like this was our new home, as opposed to just sort of an expat existence in a tiny little monoculture. That's not what we were looking for. And so we found a Preply tutor to help us, and very bright, lovely person, but it was a very different approach to learning the language. And for me, and this is the same when I'm learning anything, and most recently with picking up a new instrument at age 58, I like understanding the why behind the instruction, not just sort of the how. And so an example that was really tricky was right away in the learning, we were jumping into nu and na, and didn't understand that was a contraction. Am I getting that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Straight into the deep end with the grammar and not really understanding where that was coming from, right?
It was sort of like memorize this. It's rote learning as opposed to really understanding the concepts behind it. And the fact that both of us speak pretty good Spanish meant that we could grasp onto the whys even more quickly than if we didn't have a Romance language. So it was, yeah, really, really valuable to start working with you, Liz. I'm not just saying that. And by the way, for everyone who's listening here, Liz is in fact a real person. She is not AI bot. We know that now from our wonderful get together this weekend. But yeah, the kind of learning that we were really looking for.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, you had a very common experience where you think, hey, I want to learn this language, but the first thing that is thrown at you is kind of complex grammar, and you struggle to kind of put the pieces together. What were some of the things that early on were some like aha moments for you that helped it start to click? And how are you with your Portuguese now, if we fast forward to today? What are some of the things you're able to do now after just 46 days, as you said?
I mean, I think the fact that we had a little bit of, like the pronunciation tricks that you had taught us just gave us a little bit more confidence to, we were just a little bit more brave to engage with our landlords and our neighbors. And I think in turn that signaled to the people that we were speaking with that it really mattered to us for us to understand them and not just for us to be understood. So I think just the pronunciation made such a huge difference. When you just kind of broke down, okay, this, when you see an E and an I together, this is what that sounds like, unlocked so much. It just made us so much more confident to try and speak.
For me, one of the most magic moments, and it was early on in, I'm sure it had to be module 1.
Mm-hmm.
Your beautiful explanation of the difference between a stressed time language and a syllable time language was so helpful to me to understand why syllables are dropped and which syllables will be dropped. Hugely valuable to me. And that was a big unlocking. And yeah, I think you're massively overstating how successful we've been, but we're brave. And we have been speaking a lot every single day. We're definitely making much more progress now that we have, language partners, and we have, tomorrow we're going to be heading to the water company, and we're going to be speaking with somebody who, at least based on our last experience at Smush, the Central Water Company, we are not going to be speaking with somebody who speaks English. So we're going to bone up on water Portuguese, and we're going to do it. And, we have to, and that's what our life is like here.
Excellent. I love that. So yeah, it's really important early on for anybody who thinks I'm never going to be able to understand this language because it's spoken too fast. I think it's really important what you said there, that there is a science to it, and there is a way that we can work around the fact that things seem fast and we don't get all the syllables. Just understanding that that's something that is happening is really helpful for beginners. And also the pronunciation piece, I love what you said, it made us brave. And this is a problem with all of my students. They don't want to brag, but I'm going to make you brag throughout this whole interview because that's the point of it. Because speaking of your friends and neighbors, let's just show the gang who are watching exactly what you can do by showing them the lovely friends you've been making. Tell us about this group of amazing people.
So this is a hike we did maybe 3 weeks ago. The woman in the middle with the most ecstatic expression, that is her. That is her full-time resting face is ecstatic. Her name is Tina, and Liz got a chance to see her at least, and maybe even say a quick hello just randomly as she was nearby. Tina is just an incredible human being, and we met her initially when we reached out to our landlords and said, hey, we'd love to keep your house clean. Do you have a recommendation or referral for somebody who could help us? And they said, yes, we'll bring Tina by. I think you're going to really like her. And that was a tremendous understatement. We love her. And so in addition to spending an hour with her before she starts cleaning, we pay her for an extra hour of her valuable time so that we can have an hour of conversation about what we've done since the last time we saw her. We go on hikes with her. We've gone to fado performances with her. We went to a Buddhist meditation that she introduced us to in Sintra, and she's just an amazing person. And then the other people you see in the picture, other than the two of us, are neighbors who live just a couple houses over, and they're both from Colorado. But despite the fact that we're all, the four of us were English speakers, Tina does not speak much English. She says, thank you very much with a lovely accent. But that's basically all the English she has. And so when we're together, we speak Portuguese.
Amazing. So that's Tina. Love her, obsessed with her already. And who are these guys?
Lowell's in the middle. The gentleman on the right, Jose, is one of our landlords, and the person on the left is Jose's son, Nuno. This whole family, our landlord family, has really taken us under their wing, and we are familiar with, I'd say maybe 15 members of the family now, 3 different generations. We've gone to some community events with them. We've gone to concerts. We went to a big mussel festival on the beach, like mussels, the kind you eat for Easter. And I won't spoil what comes next, but Nuno gave Lowell an amazing experience.
Yes, let's find that picture. I mean, we've got so many amazing ones to share, but tell us about this.
Yes, so Nuno's dad, Jose, has season tickets to Sporting, the football club, and Nuno's daughter wasn't able to go because she was in Andorra, so I got to be the lucky recipient of an extra billet, and had an amazing time. I lost my European soccer virginity. It was amazing.
That's so much fun. I love to hear this so much. And by the way, for anybody who has just tuned in, because I know we have people dropping in and out of the stream, I'm here with my students, Kris and Lowell, who are sharing their experience of learning Portuguese to give you guys the confidence to do the same. They started from 0, and they can now have this beautiful relationship with their landlords and 15 members of their family, all because they took learning Portuguese seriously and have made amazing progress in it. So if that is something that you would like to do as well, you just need to go to talkthestreets.com/apply to see if you qualify for an application call. We would love to have you come join us inside the program. So if this is sounding good and you want to find out more, that is where you need to go. So tell me a bit more about this mussels on the beach. Like, this sounds like an experience that you wouldn't have had unless a local told you about it, right?
Yeah, you found it, so you should tell it.
Yeah, so we learned that there's been a tradition in this part of Portugal. We're just northwest of Lisbon, really about 30 miles away, where people have for hundreds of years gone to a specific beach on Good Friday and gathered mussels. The tradition originally stemmed from people who could not afford bacalhau for their family. It's a fish dish that's traditionally enjoyed with families on Good Friday. If they could not afford the expensive cod, they would go to the beach at sunrise and harvest the mussels as a family event. And so this event continues on, and you go at low tide. And fortunately for us, low tide was at 10 a.m., so we didn't have to get up at the crack of dawn. But we were just had the most incredible experience of coming onto the beach with, hundreds of other families. Again, multi-generational communal event, and people picnicking on the beach or having coffee in thermoses while other family members were learning how to take the mussels off of the rocks during the low tide. It was just really, really special. The following day, on another beach, there was a big mussel festival that was hosted by the town, and there were prepared mussels and like a beer garden. And that was the event that our landlord, our host family, invited us to attend with them. And they just folded us in and had us join them at this big long table, and it felt very special.
The only problem The only
Right, go
problem was that I was talking so much with these new friends I met at the end of my table that Chris ate all the fries and I got none.
Amazing. You were talking so much and it was in Portuguese, I assume, with the
Actually,
others?
no, I
Damn.
cannot tell a lie. These two gentlemen were, yeah, we were talking about things that went way beyond my abilities to say them in Portuguese. It wasn't just sort of the normal kind of niceties. It was getting deep about the political situation in the US.
Got it. Okay, yeah, we don't need to go that far with our Portuguese. But this is so special, as you say. Like, I can't imagine how that would have felt. Like, how does this contrast to what you were kind of expecting when you moved here? Did you imagine that A, you'd make so much progress with the language, and B, that you would find friends like this to be your connections here?
Yeah, I was really struggling to find a language partner when we were still in the States.
Mm.
I posted to some Facebook groups and I was kind of, making some attempts to try to find somebody that wanted to practice their English and I could practice my Portuguese, and it wasn't happening. But it surprised me that it was so quickly that we were able to connect with people that lived in our neighborhood, that were more than happy to practice, help me practice Portuguese and in turn practice their English. Tina, who, has become such a big part of our lives. I mean, we've gone hiking with her. She's taken us on amazing trails. We share, we bake for each other. We share food with each other. I mean, she's really a special person. And when we went on that first hike, it was the first or second week we had been here. And the hike was about 4 hours. So we were speaking Portuguese for 4 hours.
Wow.
I mean, basic, and she kindly repeated many things, but yeah, I just felt like at the end, wow, I had no idea I was going to be able to go on a hike with somebody who did not speak English and converse for
Yeah,
half the day.
absolutely. Those people are the best teachers because you can't slip into English when you
Right.
need to. It really has to be with people who, don't speak English. So yeah, if you do have questions for Chris and Lowell, don't be shy. Please drop them in the chat and we will try and cover as many as we can throughout.
Can I add one?
At the end. Mm-hmm.
One quick thing. I think one of the things that surprised me the most is how generous people have been when they do speak good English, when we use, tips and tricks that we've learned from you, Liz, to ask them, we know your English is so much better than our Portuguese, but would you be willing to let us stumble and speak in Portuguese? And every single time we have done that, people have been willing. It's been very generous because, I describe our Portuguese as, basically Tarzan Portuguese at this point. And, for someone to listen to our slow speak and hunting for words and then slipping into Spanish when we can't, find the word, it's been very generous of people, and that's not something I expected.
Yeah, and it's not even something that everybody experiences. So I think that's going to be really helpful for anybody who's listening who, thinks, oh, what's the point? Because everyone speaks English. Like, A, they don't. And B, even if they do, you do find people who are willing to let you practice. So that is important. A question here from the chat. How long had you been learning Portuguese? Because even though you arrived less than 2 months ago, you did decide to actually start in the States. Why did you decide to start before you came? Because that's a question I get asked a lot, like, when should I start? And how long has it taken you to get to where you are now?
Well, I'll provide an answer that is vaguely humorous, which is we started, I guess it would have been July, August.
About 6 months.
6 months before we got here. And so sometimes when I'm in a conversation with people, they say, wow, you've only been here 6 weeks? And I don't always tell them that I started with a great teacher back in July before I got here. So yeah, so I sound good for her 6 weeks of training. I'm not sure I sound good for, the true, 8 months of training.
Well, you certainly do. We're going to hear some of your Portuguese as well. So, as I say, I'm going to make you brag. It's very important that you accept the win of how far that you have got. Just quickly, again, I know that people are dropping in and out. So if you have just tuned in, I'm here with Kristin and Lowell, my students, who are sharing their experience of learning Portuguese to give you guys the confidence to do the same. They started from zero and now they are enjoying 4-hour hikes, sitting and chatting to the hairdresser as well. I heard from you when we were doing our prep interview.
Yes.
You can tell us about that. But if you also would like my help getting to this stage where you can make friends in Portugal and use your Portuguese on a day-to-day basis, then just go to talkthestreets.com/apply to see if you qualify for an application call, and hopefully come join us inside the program if this is sounding good and you would like to learn more. So a couple more questions that have come in, and then we will go ahead and listen to this lovely Portuguese of yours. Did you feel it was an advantage to know some basic Spanish, or was it a bit of a hindrance?
I would say it was a help. Yes, unquestionably, it was a help for me, and I think Chris will say the same thing in a moment. To me, it was a help because the grammar, yeah, I mean, at one point, I was seeing so many parallels, obviously very different pronunciation, lots of false cognates, things like that. But at one point, I was finding so many parallels and similarities that I went to Claude, sorry, and used to make. But I checked, I said, when were these two languages one language? When did they, experience speciation and, differentiation? And, at least according to Claude, it was 1,000 years ago. And that's the way it feels to us, is that these are sister brother languages. They have similar parentage. And so I have not found any time where my knowledge of Spanish, which is rusty, I used to speak very, very well 35 years ago. I have not found a single case where my knowledge of Spanish has been a hindrance, but for the obvious times when, I'll say something, I'll use a verb that, I'm substituting a Spanish verb for a Portuguese verb, but that doesn't happen all that much. I'm being pretty conscientious because I know that Portuguese people don't love Spanish, and I'm trying to be.
You know, it's a different language. That's the most important part.
Yes, yeah. Right.
I think that it really helps for reading. Mm-hmm. So, immediately my reading comprehension was like, oh boy, Spanish is really helping. But then when people speak and I don't understand it right away, I feel like, oh my God, why didn't I get that the first time? So yes, I would say for the most part, it definitely Spanish has helped.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I'd agree. Even I learned Spanish first, and as you say, it makes so much sense written down. I think that the part where people trip up is we have to pronounce things differently, and train our ear to the way Portuguese is spoken, to be able to pick out, because Spanish is a great example of a syllable-timed language where we are going to enunciate every syllable, which is very different in Portuguese. So those are kind of the two big things that would stand out. But yeah, speaking Spanish is going to give you a head start. But speaking of which, let's hear one of your recent submissions to our pronunciation workshop so we can hear how beautiful your Portuguese is and it's not sounding
Actually,
Spanish.
I already know I messed up one word, but
yes,
more Spanish,
I always tell you. Got it. I always tell my students, like, it would be so boring if you submitted stuff that had no mistakes. I would not have a job to do anymore. But this is one of the last dialogues in the course. It's one of the most advanced. It's one of the longest. We're using some of the most difficult grammar rules that we teach in the program. So for those of you who don't know, we have 2 sessions a week where students are able to submit audio clips and have their pronunciation corrected in real time. So let's go ahead and take a listen to your most recent one so people can get a flavor of how your Portuguese is going.
Então, Marina, estás fixe?
Olá, Pedro. Estou mais ou menos. E tu?
Sim, estou bem. Quais são os planos esta semana?
Estou cheia de trabalho. Na quinta tenho uma reunião com a minha chefe. Tenho que preparar uma apresentação muito complicada. Então, vou trabalhar tarde durante a semana toda.
Que chato.
É, mas na sexta vou jantar com uma amiga para comemorar o aniversário dela. E tu?
Esta semana estou livre. Estou a pensar em viajar para o Algarve. O meu tio tem uma casa com piscina lá.
Que inveja!
Desculpa. Então não podes vir comigo, pois não?
Não, não dá mesmo.
Que pena. Pronto, vou convidar a Marcela.
Ok, divirtam-se. Olha, não mandem fotos.
Ok. Não olhes para o meu Instagram. Vais morrer de inveja.
Tchau, Pedro.
Lovely. It's so nice to hear you guys feeling natural and being able to take it at that speed where you can actually like use the intonation of someone who's annoyed or somebody who's laughing. It's just really, really cool to see. So it would be great to move into some kind of tips that you guys might have for anybody who is watching and is thinking, well, I'm never going to get that far because they're obviously good at languages and it's not going to work for me. What's some advice that you might give people to get them started?
I have a couple. One is we try to listen to the radio when we're in the car. We have found a radio station we love for music, but we try to be disciplined and listen to talk radio as well. We found that neither of us have a very religious background, but we listen to some of the religious programming because it's the best enunciated, slowest, clearest speech. And so I'd say I'm at the point of understanding lots of words, some sentences, and very few full paragraphs when I'm listening, but I know it's good for my brain. Another tip I have is I have, back in the States, I tried not to have my phone with me all the time, but here I do try to keep my phone with me. And every time I see a new word, I look it up and then I take a photograph of what I've just learned. Or I'm in a conversation where I really wished I'd been able to say, no, I'm talking about a nail, not a hammer or whatever, whatever it might be, that every time I mess up or, I'm grasping for something that I can't find, I will put it also in Google Translate, take a photo of it, and then put it in my master spreadsheet that I started through your course.
Perfect.
Yeah, I would say that somebody on your team gave the great advice of just incorporating your practice into something else that you do every day. So back in the States, before we moved here, in the morning, get up, have a cup of coffee, and just do a lesson in the morning while my brain was fresh. And I just started to link it with having that coffee in the morning was when I would do a Portuguese lesson. We were not studying for hours and hours a day. I would say like a half hour to 45 minutes a day. We tried to really do a little bit every single day, but
Right.
we were not spending hours on the platform. We just tried to make it a part of our daily routine.
I think the modules are perfect length for me. And I'll be honest, I didn't do a lot of the extra exercises. And in fact, there's so much rich content in there that even as I feel like, I'm legitimately at, completed 5 modules, I'm going back to the beginning to start over and to see all the things that I missed the first time and to do those extra exercises.
Great. So not being afraid of repetition and not having to study for hours a day, because that's another question that's come in that we get a lot. Like, what does the study schedule look like? It seems like you didn't go for super long, study sessions. It was little and often, which is what I recommend. Is that right? Is that how you'd?
Totally for me.
Absolutely.
But I will say that my wife is definitely more disciplined than I am, and she's better at studying.
And do it in the morning when your brain is fresh. It's always better to
and
learn.
when your willpower is the strongest.
Yeah.
That's a really good tip. Someone else has asked, where do you live? You don't have to be super specific, but are there a lot of expats in the city, and is it difficult to speak to people who don't speak English?
Yeah, so we live in Colares, and Yeah, it is not difficult when we're having transactional conversations to talk to people who do not speak English. In fact, last night we went to a concert that we didn't see any expats at all. So in our area, there are plenty of people from other places. You know, our next door neighbors from Germany. We've got Dutch neighbors. And one American couple. But we do encounter plenty of people who don't speak any English. And so at the concert last night, we were the only people who looked like they hadn't lived in our little town in Colares for many, many years. And when we met the husband of a new friend and he spoke no English, we were excited. That was a plus for us because we didn't, and we told him that, that's better that you don't speak English because we really want to practice our Portuguese.
Lovely. So I love that because most people who, maybe are moving to an area where they don't speak Portuguese, is something to dread, encountering somebody who you can't fall back on English with. So I'm really glad to see how much you guys have enjoyed it. I mean, you can see from your face and how you're telling the stories that this has been such a positive, lovely experience. And that's what I want for anybody who's listening or anybody who's too scared to try. Like, it doesn't have to be so serious and it doesn't have to be so scary. Like, we can work together to make it fun and rewarding. So the last thing I have to ask you before we go is, of course, would you recommend the Portuguese Pro program?
Oh, absolutely.
Undoubtedly. Yes.
I mean, the way you teach language, Liz, is super effective and also really fun. But there's a bonus to your platform that is the community, and that's the other students who are engaging with each other, offering each other tips for studying, suggesting places to go on weekends. Oh, this is an incredible part of Portugal. You should come see this. Before we had moved, hearing what other people's journey of applying for a visa was like. We've just, been very supported by so many people that are other students of yours. So yeah, we're very enthusiastically endorsing your language platform.
I'll just share one more thing. Liz, it feels like you're in my head a lot where before I even do where I'm going to struggle because you speak Spanish, because you often talk about the challenge that a native English speaker will have, or somebody who already has some Spanish background. I mean, the pitfalls and you warn us before we fall into the pitfall. It's really been fantastic.
Well, I'm so pleased to hear that because I'll never forget when I first decided to start doing this, the first person I told was, you're going to teach Portuguese and you're not Portuguese, like, good luck. So to know that I have something to offer as a native English speaker and somebody who learned the language in the old-fashioned way, and it has been so lovely to sort of translate my experience and help people like you out who are, such wonderful stories of people who come here to actually connect with people and fit in and learn the language and all of those things. So I'm really, really proud to have heard your story today. That is all we have time for, unfortunately, but thank you so much for joining me. I know that you're going to have inspired a lot of people today. So yes, please do not be shy. If you would like to apply to the Portuguese Pro program where I met the wonderful Kristin and Lowell, then just go to talkthestreets.com/apply. We get through the applications as quickly as we can, and we would love to see more of you there. So thank you everyone for joining, and thank you to Kristin and Lowell. I can't wait to see what you do next, but I will see all of you very soon. Ciao, ciao everyone. Ciao.